I was doing a little warm-up intro. Now you're dropping great interview gems a little earlier than anticipated.
Well, it
Okay.
was a good warm up. That's what warm ups do.
Well, we had the 6 minutes warm-up of like, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? So we're flying. My name is Zulie, and I'm a product marketer here at Medium. And Emily, please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Emily. I'm a freelance comedy writer and a fan of Medium. I'm also an editor at Slackjaw, and I host Slackjaw Live right in New York City.
Well, you said you came to Medium in 2020. What brought you originally to Medium?
I got into NBC's Late Night Writers Workshop, and one of my fellow writers in the cohort, we were talking about ways to make your writing more out there beyond the traditional gatekeepers, the publications we all love. And he recommended Slackjaw, which is Medium's largest comedy publication. So I submitted a piece. It was the time when the TV show Emily in Paris had just come out. So I did a real life Emily pitches alternatives to Emily in Paris. And I submitted that to Slackjaw. And I think within an hour, I got an acceptance. And that was the fastest acceptance I've ever gotten in my life. So I was immediately hooked.
Yeah, I think for people who are used to working in traditional writing, publishing worlds, the speed at which Medium editors can work is jaw-dropping.
It's astounding. And then, of course, we all love validation. So it's like, keep giving me the compliments, please.
Yeah. I know you and I are familiar with what Medium publications are, but to an outsider, I think they can be kind of an unusual concept. How would you describe Medium publications to someone who doesn't really know what they are yet?
I would say Medium publication, the Medium as a site offers you the opportunity to self-publish. So if you just want to put something out there, no publication needed. You can just get it out there. But if you want to put it into a pre-existing bucket, something where it's like they have a specific kind of premise they like, they're looking for a certain angle, that would be a publication. So for humor writers, something like Slackjaw or the Belladonna comedy would make sense because you're going to be automatically engaging with editors who are usually have more experience than you do. And you're also going to have readers who will look at it. You're going to get more eyeballs on your work, and it gives you the opportunity to grow. And also, a big thing I always think as a writer is how am I going to make this sustainable for myself? And if you're getting that kind of feedback and access to community, you're going to be more prone to write other pieces to get ideas. So I highly recommend looking for publications that make sense for your writing.
So you've been obviously writing on Medium for 5 years, and it sounds like you've been writing for a long time before that as well. How has writing on Medium specifically changed the way you approach about developing these ideas to be published?
It's empowered me to go to the odder pieces, the more absurd pieces. Medium is more, it gives writers the ability to put out their, I think, sometimes weirder pieces or the pieces
Mhm.
that they've grown so attached to. And they're like, I know there's a home for this. Maybe it's not in one of these traditional buckets. Maybe it's one of these smaller publications, but that's how you find an audience and future collaborators you might want to work with too. I've had that so many times where I have a piece in my gut. I know this is good. I know other people will think this is funny. And you've gotten it to the point where you polished it as much as possible. And everyone's like, no, thank you. And you're like, but I know there's something here. And that's often where it's a good fit for Medium. And by the way, it's so validating when you're right and then people are responding to it the way you had hoped they would.
Yeah, it's like I had a feeling in my gut. Do
I
you
knew
have
it.
do you have any stories of yours that really stick out in your memory where you've had that experience where you're like, okay, I wrote this and it really hit those readers that I thought it was gonna hit?
I can think of one from this summer. Freakier Friday had was about to come out,
Mhm.
and I came up with a piece called "I Freaky Friday with My Mom, and I'm Not Switching Back." And so I took this idea of like, why would a millennial want to switch back with a baby boomer? She can own a house. She's
Yeah.
going to get Social Security. And I just mapped it out into the body switching model of the movie. And it was one of those pieces where I thought it was really strong, and all the traditional publications said no, thank you. And so I put it on Slackjaw. And to date, it's the piece that's had the highest engagement with people. And I the instinct I had was correct, and that's really meaningful as a writer because you need to learn to trust your instincts.
Yeah, that's something else I hear from a lot of writers on Medium is that the speed with which you get that feedback, especially compared to, like traditional publishing, it really helps you hone that sense of, yeah, I think this really is good because you find out pretty quickly if it landed with your readers or not.
Absolutely. You're developing your taste too, and you're
Mhm.
putting things out on the floor the way you would if you were putting it out as a play or as a live comedy show. You're going to find out really quickly if people like it or not. And sometimes they don't, and that's good feedback too.
You have taken the writing community off of medium.com, off of the online written page, and you've started making real community events in person. Can you tell me a little bit about what that process was like?
Yeah. So this started, I had been an editor at Slackjaw for about a year, and one of our writers reached out to me and said, "Hey, I just moved to New York City. Would you want to get a cup of coffee?" So I sat down with her and we had such an engaging, funny conversation, good tips on writing, but also just connecting as people. And I always say, the great thing about Medium is you're able to meet all these people online and be internet friends, but you're looking at a profile picture that's 1 inch. A 1 inch circle. So you're not getting the full person,
Yeah.
and so just meeting with that one writer, something turned on in my brain where I was like, oh, there's a lot of good writers on the East Coast, right outside the New York City area. Why don't I just bring them together? I'm an editor. So I reached out to Alex Baya and the team at Slackjaw, and they were game for me taking our publication and putting it into a live comedy show. I found a theater where it made sense. And that November, which was last November, I
Mm.
held our first event, and it was so much fun. And the show sold really well. So it answered to me the question of, do people actually want to do this in real life? And the answer was a resounding yes.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So it's been going on for a year. Have there been any unexpected benefits or pleasant surprises that you didn't see coming?
There have been so many benefits. The biggest of which is, the show itself is a showcase of the work, things that have been published on Slackjaw. And that's great for the writers. It's a great flex for what you can do. But also, the networking that happens afterwards is, in my opinion, the best networking possible because it's writers being able to just sit down and talk about their process, what's been frustrating them. We're breaking out of our isolated desk chambers and we're able to move out into the world. And the other thing about it is, you're getting writers of all levels living in the same space. So I've seen writers who it's been their first time ever doing a comedy show and they did a Slackjaw live. And I've also had like pro writers. I had a longtime Simpsons writer show up at a show. At our last show, we had Steve Young, who's been a writer for Dave Letterman for years, and he worked on
Wow.
that late show with him. And, so you're getting people from the New York City scene who have all levels of experience, and there's value in that, and also the different generations of writers talking to each other and sharing information.
Have you seen a lot of like writers helping mentor other writers as a result of these events?
Yes, I think it's very natural that you connect with people. You're seeing them on stage reading one or two pieces. And so I've seen at the bar after the show, like the thing you always hope happens at a networking night happens at these networking nights where people are talking about what resonated with their pieces. And so, yeah, it's collaborations happen very naturally. I've collaborated with people out of these shows. And also, and I think more importantly, not just as writers, you're getting to hear about them as humans. And
Hmm.
it gives you this sense of we're not just our words, we're also like we're human beings who want to continue to keep working in this industry, which can be very discouraging if you're just looking at it as Emily's individual journey, Zulie's individual journey. Like we actually have a lot more in common than we do apart.
Hmm. This
I
did
think
help me.
also when you're talking to other writers, other creators, they know how hard it is to make stuff. They know what that process feels like. So the kind of feedback you're going to get is different than just a random flyby on the internet of someone being like, I don't like this and I don't like you. It's like,
Oh my gosh.
that's less likely to occur.
Since you've been running these events for a year, have you found that it's changed your view of the Slackjaw community or the Medium community?
It's given me a much more holistic view of the Slackjaw community and at large the Medium community because I realized that these writers are just like me. Everybody feels like they're on the verge of burning out and they're
Mm.
all juggling a busy life, right, with their family, with employment, with all these different challenges that come up. So it's not unusual to feel discouraged. But if you're able to find other people who are writing the kind of work that inspires you, you have a better shot of being able to continue on as a writer. But when you're talking to other writers, they give you the kind of feedback where they're like, oh, this one line, I keep
Mhm.
thinking about this one line from your piece. And that's like another artist commenting upon your work and noticing the craft of it,
Mhm.
right? Because we're getting beyond just the it was good or it didn't work for me. We're getting into structure and craft and choices, things that writers are looking for. So yeah, it has made me feel, I would say, a lot more empowered in putting my work out there because I know what my audience looks like because I've talked to them and I've had coffee with them, and a lot of them are my close friends now.
It sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like
Mhm.
these events are mostly targeted at existing Slackjaw writers. Have you been able to recruit any non-medium writers, like just comedy writers, or I don't know, just anybody who's interested in comedy who wasn't aware of Slackjaw to come write for you as a result of these?
Yes. So because
Really?
I've done yes, yeah, that's kind of the cool piece of it. So the show has evolved as I've been having them, and the first show was just kind of like, let me put it out there, let me see how people like it. And after the first two shows, I realized, oh, I want to start recruiting writers for this too. I don't want to just use our existing pool of Slackjaw writers, although I love them. That's going to run out at one point. So I started asking other writers I was aware of, or writers I had written, or even people who are just funny stand-ups who I'm like, hey, you should be writing for Slackjaw. You should be on Medium. And the response was really positive. I just had to kind of explain the platform a little bit. Most people were aware of what Medium was, so it wasn't much of a lift. And then I'd give them a theme for the piece. That's the other thing I've moved into, is doing themed shows. So this fall I did a banned book show ahead of Banned Book Month,
Mhm.
and everybody wrote a piece inspired by or centered around challenge text. So of course we got a lot of Bridge to Terabithia pieces. Uh, yeah, a lot of Harry Potter. We got all sorts of good things. The pieces you might expect, and then some outside of that as well. But one of the cool things about Slackjaw Live is that in the middle of the show, I interview a professional comedy writer so that everyone can get that sort of like sit down conversation moment.
Mhm.
And not a conversation unlike the one we're having here. I'll have prepared about a 15-minute conversation with them. I'll ask some questions about craft. Craft is my favorite thing to talk about. We'll also talk about how to structure your pieces, common issues they've run into, all sorts of things that writers of all levels would be interested in knowing. And then we also continue on the show by having people read their pieces that have been published on Slackjaw. And we always end with a big closer. At this last show, we had Steve Young, who had written for Dave Letterman. So that was a huge honor to have him. He fully memorized his piece, which I had never seen a writer do. So,
That's dedication to the art. Wow. That's really cool to hear.
yes, I love it. It's so fun.
This is amazing. It's really, really amazing to hear how you've built this kind of community around writing, which I think so many writers think of it as this really solitary act. But I don't know, behind every screen there is a reader, or sometimes on Medium, many readers if you manage to find them. And I love hearing about how bringing these to real physical spaces has made that community element so much more apparent and so much stronger to your writers. If you had some advice for anybody who wanted to do the same thing as you and create these kind of community hub events, whether in comedy or any other genre, where would you tell them to start?
I would tell them to start by finding a theater that can embody the vision. We are working with a theater called Caveat on the Lower East Side, and they're all about smart, nerdy comedy, and they also are about selling cheap drinks. So they get the mission of it, and they're here to support it. I'd also look for a space where live streaming is possible. That's something we can do with our shows, which makes it inclusive to other writers in different cities. So try to think big about it. What do you want the future of the show to be like? And then just be ready to, it's going to be a lot of communication work like any job. Be ready to really produce it and learn as you go. But if you're willing to put in the time, I guarantee it will be way more rewarding than it is consuming.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about the rewards. I know you alluded to this earlier in the interview, but either for you personally, for Slackjaw as a whole, what's the summary of the benefits? Or I guess in a better way of saying, what makes you want to keep going?
The idea of meeting other writers and the idea of exploring other parts of myself as both an editor and a showrunner and being able to develop myself as a leader, it's so hard to get opportunities as a woman in comedy. And so I often think if you see a gap in the market, you should fill it yourself. Because, a lot of times it's not a matter of you keep proving yourself, improving yourself in different ventures, and you're still not getting the opportunities you want. Go make them for yourself because you should believe in what you have to say.
Hmm. I love that. Yeah. Thank you so much for watching this video, and thank you, Emily, so much for sharing your experiences and your wisdom. I know I'm not alone when I say that writing can feel really lonely, so it's great to hear from someone boots on the ground who has done this, who's done this for a year and who plans to keep going in such a successful way. So thank you very much. Is
Thank you,
there,
Zulie. It's been great talking with you.
if people wanted to find out more about these shows, about you, about Slackjaw, where should they go?
You can follow us. We are on Instagram. I'm just figuring the platform out. Slackjaw Live is our
Mhm.
Instagram, and I'm on Instagram as the Emily Menez, which is a bit audacious because there are others out there.
Well, thank you very much again for your time, and thank you all for watching. We'll see you in the next video. Bye, everybody.
Bye.